Freeride fans to the first recap edition of the Freeride Guide podcast. My name's Mark Warner.
And I am Derek Foose.
And we are on opposite ends of the globe right now, thanks to the wonders of technology. We're looking at each other and we're about to talk about the Verbier Pro. There's a lot to talk about the Verbier Pro, everything leading up to it, everything that happened into it. So where do we start? You're currently sitting in a hotel in Geneva. So why don't you talk about a little bit about what you've been going through this last week?
It's been such a roller coaster. We were in Kappel for the World Junior Champs, and that was, that in itself was a roller coaster. And the day after the comp, I had to hustle to Verbier because they called the FWT Verbier Pro on for Saturday. And basically like planes, trains, and automobiles hauling ass across Europe to try to get to Switzerland. And then we had one day to prep, and it was on. It was so fast. It was so well executed. They basically kind of floated the idea on Monday, and by Saturday we were having an FWT comp on the Petit Bec in Verbier. So like hats off to everyone involved for making that happen, because it was an incredible push, and it would have been real easy to just call it way too hard to do it.
So what were some of the, did you talk to anybody really about some of the decisions to create this event? Because that's basically what they did. There's no plans for it. It was just like, hey, we canceled Baqueira. Andorra doesn't look all that great. We need something.
It was really that simple. And they knew that they had snow there. The resort of Verbier was behind it. They were down to help. And everybody was kind of willing to give it a go. So they just went for it. And everyone is so grateful that they did, because it went incredibly well.
Interesting. It's funny. Is one of the things I was thinking about is like signage, right? Like, so, when they have these events, you see big posters and signs, and they have all of the different events all have their different branding and their different coloring and all that sort of thing. Well, the Verbier Pro is a brand new event, and I did see a bunch of signage and all that kind of stuff, because I always think about that weird part of the logistics, because that takes a while to get organized and like designed and printed, and they still had that stuff going too, so it was pretty wild.
Yeah, everything got made between Monday and Friday, all of it. And the Baqueira organizers were okay with the Verbier Pro using their bibs, which was great, because that would have been impossible, I think, to pull off a bunch of riders' bibs with flags and names and everything and get it all right and done in time. But just incredible effort, such a heavy lift to get it done, and man, did it ever work out.
Right. And that's a good point, too, because you got to be clear that this isn't the Baqueira event that they're hosting in Verbier. This is the Verbier Pro event. Exactly.
Yeah, it's its own standalone event that they were able to just kind of execute super last minute, but it was not a restage of Baqueira. It wasn't a pre-restage of Ordino in Andorra. This was its own event. They felt they needed to add something to the calendar, because, as you said, it's not looking great in Andorra. So we'll keep our ears out for news on that one, but it's definitely, it needed to happen, and it did.
Yeah. So kudos to everybody there. And then, I watched the event live. It was on at 1:15 in the morning here, which was good. I've been up late the last few days, actually editing the emergency pods that we had done, talking about all the news. I will say we called it. Tiffany Peritan was definitely on the roster for this year as a wild card. I ended up speaking with the FWT not long after we recorded, and they said, "How did you know that?" I explained, and they said, "Hey, all right, just I'm like, we'll tease it. We won't make it like a confirmed statement." And said, "Okay, that's cool." So that's awesome to see Tiff back on the program, and we will definitely be talking about this shortly. First of all, we've been talking about the Backslap. The Backslap segment, where you can either give us a slap on the back because you like what we're doing, or you want to call us out and we backslapped hard on a take, or you just want to give us, or you just want to ask us a question. So we've got another one, and we'll probably get started with this because it kind of goes within what we're talking about right now. So this is from Jan Vanderenden, or Jan Vanderenden. Thanks for keeping up the good work. Stoked for the season. I have a question about the rescheduled event to start at Verbier's Bec de Ross. It was actually on the Petit Bec. Do you guys think this will mean that there will be 2 events on the Bec this year, or just this one, or just this one event on the Bec, with the finals being held somewhere else, potentially Baqueira? As an avid Verbier Extreme fan, having memories of me sitting on my dad's shoulder looking at the big screen, I'd hope for 2, of course.
Well, thanks, Jan. That's a great question. The plan is 100% to still have the Extreme Verbier at the end of the season as the FWT finals, ideally starting from the top of the Big Bec. That is 100% the plan as we kind of move through the season. This was, as you talked about at the start, Mark, this was totally just an emergency event to try to make something happen for the riders to get a result in the bag. So we will still be going back to Verbier in the spring for the Extreme, and fingers crossed that we're on the top.
Was there a reason why they went to Petit Bec versus the Big Daddy?
For sure, yeah. They went to check out all the options early in the week, and when they rode the dogleg on the Big Bec, it was really, really inconsistent. There was some little pockets of okay snow. There was some breakable crust. There were big sections that were full ice. So nobody really felt good about it. Lolo said it was actually quite scary riding down the dogleg couloir. So then, they're obviously in a time crunch. So they moved over, went across and up to the top of the Petit Bec, and it was way better. Super consistent. It was really smooth. And we lucked out with a bit of snowfall the night before the event. So that totally helped things. All that powder that was spraying around from the riders was from the night before, about 10 centimeters at the top. And you could see it definitely had different effects from the wind on different parts of the face, but just way more consistent, way more predictable over there. So that was a big part of the decision. And as well, for new riders and returning riders alike, the big Bec de Ross for the first comp of the year is a pretty big ask. So the Petit Bec is just slightly more digestible.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jan, for sending that in. And it's a good point, too, because as we mentioned before, a lot of these rookies, their first run on the Freeride World Tour is the Bec, which is pretty wild. And another point I wanted to bring up is a lot of the North American athletes, this is their first time with a visual inspection rather than an on-course inspection.
Totally, and they did great. I mean, that Petit Bec has kind of a nice aspect to it in terms of a competition face, where it's relatively the same pitch the whole way down, so you can see a lot of it. It's not really convex. So for a first visual inspection venue, it's a pretty good one. And the riders had to boot pack up, and the boot pack was right outside the rideable boundary that they were riding in. So they were able to see a lot of the features from the boot pack, which I think goes a long way to kind of settle the nerves in terms of finding your way on your line. And I got to give the North Americans so much credit. Every single one of them looked like they knew exactly where they were going. There was nobody lost. There was nobody, out of place or going off things they didn't mean to or anything like that. They all knew where they were. The big feedback from a lot of the riders was how scary the hike was. They were just terrified the whole way. It's like a full knife ridge. It goes down all the way. Yeah, that was definitely a common theme.
I heard it was like an hour and a half walk to get up there.
It's a long way up there.
Right. How come no heli bumps? Just money and time to sort all that stuff out?
Yeah, exactly. It's Freeride and they got everything else, but there was no heli ride, which some of them were kind of grateful for, again, because they got that look at the face while they were hiking. But yeah, an hour and a half up in the Nar the whole time. There were fixed ropes. There was a ladder in one spot to get them over a vertical section. It was like full Everest mountaineering style.
What a way to get warm, though.
Yeah.
All right. So some other things. So I watched the event on the YouTube stream, and was chatting along with a lot of the people that were there. I think about 5,000 or 6,000 people watching, and I was just chatting in the chat with everybody. And one of the few things that popped up right at the beginning was the drone pilot was getting a lot of flack at the beginning, especially through the SnowBoard Men. And I was like, hey, it's the first event of the year. Maybe this guy just needs to shake off the rust. Because a couple of the backflips, I think, were missed. I think Liam Rivera had a backflip that was kind of missed, I think. And I actually was on there being like, hey, guys, this is the first event. The guy's probably got maybe a little bit of rust. How often would somebody like that be training? You know what I mean?
Yeah, chasing a person going that fast without a clue where they're going.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's not like you're going to be doing it all summer, right? Probably the last time they did it was the last event, which was a while ago, over like 9 months. Yeah, 9 months ago or whatever it was. So I was like, hey, maybe just give them a little bit of a break, and then they got much better later on. I think it was just shaking off the rust, figuring it out, getting back used to the controls, kind of thing,
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely it was tough a couple times for us to see exactly what was going on, like for Anna and I in the commentary booth. But yeah, like you said, it cleaned up and then it was fine.
Now, are you watching the screen more than you're watching the slope?
Yeah, it really varies. Our tent is facing the mountain that they're riding on, so we can look up and down, but it's quite bright. And then as the sun kind of traverses the sky, eventually the sun was directly into our eyes. And huge shout out for the ops team. Johnny basically brought a tarp and a bunch of pieces of bamboo and some rope and some duct tape, and like built us a sunscreen so we could still see, because as soon as the sun's in your eyes, the screen just goes totally black. You can't see anything. So it was definitely like a game time move to recognize that we couldn't see, and then come build this like lean-to shelter in front of our tent. So after that, we had no view of the face live. We were watching entirely on the screen, which is good because we're calling what the viewer is seeing. So it is good if we're seeing the same thing, because it could be a bit weird, if we're watching it from the live view and the viewer's not seeing what we're seeing and then calling. It could be a bit confusing.
I guess you can always look up too and be like, hey, what does that feature look like in real life versus... Right?
Totally.
So did they built that while during the event was happening?
Yeah, dude. While the show was on, they were out there like directly in front of us, just behind the camera, building this like tarp bamboo contraption to keep the sun off of us. And yeah, it is nice to be able to see it for sure, because sometimes when the camera shot is kind of tight and you want to see exactly where they are on the face relative to other terrain or things like that. But it's not critical that we can see it, but it's handy.
Yeah,
and
I would think so.
We fully lost that once the tarp went up, and it was fine. We could still see what was going on the screen, which is more important, especially for the detail, because we're looking like fully across the valley at the mountain. So they're just a small speck moving down the face, so we're not seeing any detail.
Right. Well, I will give this to them, that the feed was sharp. It was crisp. There was no lag. It was one of the better ones that we'd seen for sure.
Yeah, honestly, I think in terms of production setup, Verbier might be one of the easier ones, because there's a huge garage under the jumbo tram station that they can set up all their gear, and it's got like Ethernet, and it's all hardwired in there. So versus like the backcountry, which a lot of them are in, and everything's done with satellites and generators and stuff. This is probably, and I'm totally speaking out of my ass here, like I'm not the one setting it up, but it looks like it's an easier setup than some of the other ones for sure.
Right. So they're like, hey, we should just do this at Verbier.
Yeah.
It's kind of right there. Did you find out any information about all the gear from the Avalanche last year?
Yeah, they got everything back. They got everything back. I did ask them about that, because that was just so insane. I mean, the deposit was, what did they say? It was 10 meters deep, which was a pretty clear indication that we weren't running that day. They dug for what they could directly after, and what they couldn't, they went back up in, when the snow melted.
Like
and
like
collected it
going to
all.
look for your lost GoPro kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly. And they said everything, because it was all packed up nice and tight in Pelican cases. All the generators, once they got a service, were totally usable again. All the audio and visual, or audio and camera equipment was totally fine. The only thing they said was no good was the plastic conduit that they used to build the framing for the finish corral, because it had just, it had sort of perished sitting in the snow and the sun for ages. But that stuff you can get at Home Depot for whatever, like $1 a foot. So yeah, they were so stoked on the fact that all of it was great.
That's cool. For those that don't know what we're talking about, the Verbier Extreme last year was canceled due to some snow. They basically did some controlling of the face, and they had a bigger slide rip out, and it decided to take out the finish line and all of the gear, which is why it was canceled last year. So that's great. They got everything back. That must have been nice. Hiking up there to get all their stuff in the summer. Just the thought of it makes me chuckle.
Yeah.
All right, man. So the reason we're talking today is because there was that event. So let's get right down into some of the highlights and some of the riders and everything. Like, it was pretty action-packed. It was definitely worth waiting for, in my opinion. So why don't we get started with the SnowBoard Men? Let's just go in order of how the comp went down. So it was a beautiful sunny day, fresh pow on the hill, which we've established. And we went right into the SnowBoard Men category. And, it got started, we got started off with last year's champion, which is kind of a cool little thing. Ludo.
Yeah, I like that. I thought that was really cool. Ludo kicked it off, as you said. Ludo Guildiat, the 2023 world champ. He looked kind of bummed with his score. He rode well. He rode clean. He was fast. And man, it's tough to go first. It really is tough to go first, because your line and your score sets the bar for everyone else. And you could, or at least, I'm projecting, but it looked like he was not so stoked with a 70 flat for that run. But there were definitely big things to come in that field. So I feel like they got it right. Those judges know what they're doing.
Right. So let's talk about kind of the podium here. No surprises, I think, with the winner of this event. Victor De La Rue takes the #1 spot. A guy who's won here before, a guy who's won the overall before. This is just kind of his place, and he showed it.
So confident, coming out of the gate, switch with the half cab off the cliff right at the very, very tippy top of the Petit Bec on start one. That was bold for sure, and I think kind of just a strong statement that he's still Victor. Everybody could be like, oh, he was hurt, he was away from the tour, but he's still so good, and his run, just all of it was spectacular. It was super strong. He was really fast. He had that, he's got the backflip, and then that triple drop was so cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a really good way to kind of get things rolling. We had in second place Timmy Schroeder. Is it Schroeder?
Schroeder.
Timmy Schroeder, who is new to the tour this year. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's been kind of working his way up for a while.
Yeah, I think Tim ended up third. Holden was second with another score in the 90s, which was so sick. Like, young buck, second year on tour. He had a hot start last year too. He was also in second in Baqueira in 2023. So it was kind of neat to see the symmetry of another second place start to the season, because he's kind of I don't know. I feel like he's a bit of a dark horse for a strong showing in the overall. If he can put runs like that down a few times this year, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of Holden up at the top of those results sheets.
That's true too. He did do really well. Like, actually, it was kind of like, who is this guy? Last year in Baqueira, like, where did this guy come from? Who is he? And then didn't quite finish the season quite as spectacularly as he started it, but definitely a good run. And you're right. My apologies. He did come in second. Tim was third. But 91.33 is a massive score. Anything in the 90s is a huge score. Like you said, huge heat out of the gate. big 3 and then that big smooth laid out backy at the bottom on a feature which a little moving forward into the future proved to be extremely troublesome for probably more than half of the people that hit it.
Yeah, for sure. And when you have that hindsight, it's all the more impressive that Holden was able to do that and land that as cleanly as he did, because that one, like you said, it just took down a ton of riders. So big props to him for doing that. And like you said, a score in the 90s, that's big time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, Timmy Schrader, which we mentioned, big 360 over the exposure, which was pretty cool. And then just super smooth, super smooth.
Yeah, I'm impressed, but I'm really happy for him. He's had some struggles. He had a big injury. I think Anna called him half man, half metal while he was doing his run. He's got a bunch of hardware in there, and he's just the picture of perseverance. He's kept at it, and to get himself onto the tour was already a huge win. So to start a tour career on the podium in that field is just fantastic. I love the grit and the resilience of a guy like that who kind of keeps on pushing and then gets some payoff for it.
Yeah, and he was pumped down in the finish corral. And I've already started taking note of some Derek-isms, Foose-isms. And he was talking, I think, and I'm just writing the ones down that make me laugh. I don't know if it's just because we've been friends for so long and the things you say crack me up. But you're like, if you speak German, you'll know what Timmy said. I started laughing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, but I assume it was happy chatter.
A couple other things for the men's snowboard. We had Cody Bramwell is back. Big back 3, but a little bit of a front punch. Tip submerged. And that kind of was that zone. I think we called this cliff. I think Anna referred to it as the Heartbreak Hotel, or you referred to it as the Heartbreak Hotel cliff. Yeah. Because it took out probably 75% of the people that hit it, that lower down. We can talk about this a little bit further, but is it, as the comp went on, and especially with the ski women and the ski men, maybe it was a ski thing, but was the snow conditions, did you hear that the snow conditions were a little different lower down? Were they punchier? Were they not? Like, it apparently wasn't stomping snow.
Well, yeah. Just there. That was like an anomaly in the face. The rest of it was pretty much consistent and predictable. And the riders, I mean, a bunch of them, when they came through the finish, were like, oh, that was so good. It was so fun up there. The snow was perfect, except in that one spot. So I don't know if there's a little hot spot underneath, or there was some little bit of breakable crust left over from the last cycle. If maybe it melted a little bit more there. There was a touch more wind just in that exact spot. But I didn't see it anywhere else. I asked a bunch of them after, and they weren't feeling that anywhere else. But on that feature, it was like, I mean, like you said, it just took so many people out, and it was probably less than for sure, actually less than a 50% make rate.
Yeah, he's more. Yeah, it's more than that for sure. Especially in the ski men and the ski women too. Like, we'll get to that. SnowBoard Women was the next section up. So yeah, congrats to Victor, Holden, and Tim for getting on the podium.
Like a shout out?
Notable mention.
Oh, notable mention.
A notable mention to Jonathan Penfield, who does what he does. Nice, smooth run. Got down to the bottom in 4th place, because there's quite a bit of a gap between him and fifth, from 4th to 5th as well. So those top 4 guys kind of separated themselves from the crew.
Yeah, John Powell, man, like, he's just so good. He's so good over his board. He's so balanced, and he's so experienced in those big faces that was a strong start. I mean, for a lot of riders, especially the ones that crash, they'd be looking at a 4th place finish going, oh, I wish that was me. And for John, it just builds a little bit of momentum, and I have a feeling we'll see him right in the mix for the rest of the season.
Him and Andrew Pollard are kind of the same style, but different skis and boards. They fill that category, that smooth style. Smooth. They see lines a little bit differently. Ultra consistent.
Never landing flat. Yeah,
exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. So next up, we got SnowBoard Women. And this was an extremely close competition. The top four, or from second to fourth place, there was, I think, a 2-point gap.
Yeah, it was
and
tight.
then, yeah, super tight. And then Nuria herself, Nuria Caston-Breton, took the title. But let's walk through, I think, at least, let's talk through the top four, because, Tiffany Periton, who we broke the news was going to be joining the FWT as a wild card. She is from France, but is a Verbier native. She lives just down the hill in Le Chab. She was less than a point behind Estelle Rosolio for third. So Nuria Caston-Baron with a 68, Anna Martinez with a 64.67, and then Tiffany in fourth had a 62.67. So literally 2 points separated second from four, and less than 6 points from first to fourth. So ultra close. And we called that too. We were hoping we were going to have better competition in the SnowBoard Women this year, and they proved it to us.
Yeah, they're all very close to each other, and all of them, really minus Nuria, had some pretty significant issues in their runs. So I think when we see the runs get cleaned up, we're going to see some explosive action from the women in the snowboard field, because it was definitely, there were some moments where it looked like tough going. You saw Anna Orlova kind of getting on the heel side and side slipping a little bit to get into that closeout, and then it just didn't quite exactly work for her.
Little hesitation, I think, was the fault there.
Yeah, exactly. You need a little bit of speed to connect with the transition on that one, and there was a little bit of that. Anna Martinez, man, the rookie, definitely impressed. Like, she was going for it, and again, she had a significant control issue. Putting the butt down, but I think a solid start, and for her to be on the podium in her very first Freeride World Tour event is going to give her a ton of confidence going forward.
Right, and all of them did have a little bit of trouble. Like even Nuria, she got her toe edge stuck, but she recovered really nicely, and I think that right there was what put her over the top.
Well, and Nuria was really battling some demons. She was in a pretty significant avalanche accident in Verbier last year for the Challenger event while hiking, and it was traumatizing. She's been super open about it. We're not like telling anything that shouldn't be told here, but she's been through a pretty intense mental recovery. And so for her to be able to come back to, the scene of the crime, so to speak, and then deliver a win, I mean, there was just like such an overwhelming sense of kind of relief and release and closure, all of these emotions and feelings and stuff, and also just pure burning stoke for winning an FWT comp. So that was very cool to see that kind of path that she's been traveling finish on a real high note. Right.
It's great for her and good to have her back on the tour. She's been one of those athletes that have been up and down and up and down.
Yeah, for sure. So stoked to see her come out with the win.
So with the remaining three, Anna Martinez, Estelle Rosolio, and Tiffany Periton, all French riders, it was one mistake. What mistake was what determined what position you were. Anna Martinez had that little mandatory side slip into the double, a big air heel side, but she sat down a little. Estelle Rosolio had a quite decent fluidity. I thought Tiffany's run was really quite good. I think it was a little faster and a couple bigger, like smoother airs, but she put her hand down on one of the landings. So I think that was probably what did it. So it was just a game of inches, really.
Yeah, for sure. And, like so many of the other categories, those riders are going to go kind of back to the drawing board. They'll clean things up for sure for the next event. And I have a feeling we'll see them come back with some fire. Right.
And then Erin Sauvé, she... Watching her, it's her first run on the Beck, and you had mentioned her, she had won all the events that she'd entered. Wasn't really sure if that was her path. Was it through Freeride? But she kind of got here because she just kept winning, as you said.
Yeah, the unwilling winner.
The unwilling winner, yeah. So she had to sit down too, but she also had like a good recovery through there. But The notes that I wrote was like, you can see that she views terrain differently than the rest of them. Just watching her line and seeing how like she approaches that face versus the others. So I'm really excited to kind of see what she's going to do in the next couple events. Just to see how
I am too. I'm really curious because she was telling me that she hasn't done a lot of backcountry riding. You know, she's obviously a good comp rider and an incredibly good comp rider in the North American system, where often it's like in a resort on terrain that's been you know, well traveled, shall we say. So this whole aspect is pretty new to her, and you could see she definitely has the skills, but it's going to take a minute to figure out that side of it. And I think once she does, she could be a real threat.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. It's going to be exciting to watch. So another good, very close competition for SnowBoard Women. I think that one could be like the biggest, hardest one to choose, hardest one to pick for the fun bet.
Yeah, it's gonna be really close. And the wild card there, Marissa Krozak, she rode so well. But her line was just, it just didn't have that much in it. It was really good at the start, and then she kind of rode really smooth and fluid. And, you know, she comes from that film world, so that could be another adjustment that needs to be made, recognizing that the judges don't love it when you just go by features that they feel like you could have hit, because they definitely zapped her on the line score, giving her a 55.67 with a clean run, but it was just, it just didn't have that much meat in it. So I think we'll see her again, you know, hit the books a little bit and figure out how to put together a strong line, and then the riding sure there. So yeah, it could be really interesting in this one as we move towards the overall, especially with the champ out. There's a lot of people hungry for that title, and a lot of them can do it, and especially as they start to figure out exactly what it takes to win one of these events.
Right on. All right, so moving on, we got through the men and the women's snowboard without really a lot of carnage, until we get to the ski women and the ski men, where there was a lot. The ski women event itself had 5.5 crashes. The half crash was Manon Loshi cruising through the finish line and eating it.
Oh yeah,
beyond in the finish line, which doesn't count. But that's why I said it's a half crash. Thankfully, because her run was bonkers. So the top 3 in the women's ski event was Zuzana Wittek, which was mind-boggling, because Manon Loshi had put down a run, which I didn't think anybody could possibly beat. We had Molly Armanino doing what Molly Armanino does, skiing straight, fast, and like gnarly. And there was a lot of other fun little bits here too. So where should we get started with this?
Well, yeah, it was the ski women blew me away. I mean, we expect it every time, but it just keeps on happening. The level keeps going up. There was a cool blend of pure freeride, and you know, a few of the riders really pushing the envelope with the freestyle aspect. I mean, Sabine, classic right off the bat. She was the first rider out of the gate, and you know, she went straight back to the well that delivered her a win on that face, and she skied great. She went really hard. She skied fast, and you know, I think she ended up in 5th, which was decent start. Probably not what she was hoping for.
Sixth spot yeah, with a 75, and I think that's only because she had to work a little hard to get to a couple features. Like, she got to where she needed to go, but she had to like slow her speed and like, you know, crank a turn pretty hard, and like lost a little bit of fluidity, I think, is probably where she lost that there. But yeah, great run.
Yeah, super solid. And then Molly, the second rider, always exciting. She just, I mean, you said it. She did exactly what she does. She's always kind of just a bundle of nerves right before, and then as soon as she pushes out of the start gate, it's on. And she was, I'd say she was sensible on the Molly scale. She picked a line that she knew she was going to be able to do, and with enough space to control the speed between her features. She wasn't trying to pack too much in and put turns where turns weren't going to work at that speed. And her move into that double where other people were skiing into the ramp and she aired in with that airplane turn was so sick, so technical to be able to place your feet underneath you and then straight away off the next air. It was, yeah, that was great.
I think out of everybody on the tour in the ski women, she has the best, I think, high speed reaction time. Skiing those lines that she does in South Tahoe. I don't know, like she skis with Josh Dyack a lot, who has one of the best.
You can see it in the style.
Yeah, one of the best Instagram accounts in the game, because he just skis these chutes and couloirs where you're at speed, they're super tight, and you have to make these quick movements, really, really quick movements at speed in order to keep. Basically, you're just readjusting your direction, your trajectory, and that's kind of what Molly does. Is she gets in super technical, but she does it at high speed. And makes it look smooth.
Love it.
Yeah, so that was pretty impressive. So that was right off the start.
Yeah, we had
and emotional for Molly as well too. You know, she's had a pretty tough year, and then her brother passed away earlier this year. So we know that he was there, kind of guiding her through that run. So it's really great to see her on the podium to start a season off and kind of get those jitters out of the way. You know, get it over with. You know.
Yeah, and then we had kind of some back-to-back crashers, Megan Baton going down, catching her edge and getting slammed. And then Addie Rafford going for the 360. It was interesting. It was a bit of a family affair. Her brother, Toby, was one of the 3 forerunners, and he actually spun the cliff that Addie spun. And so I think there was a bit of inspo. Who knows if there's a little inside chat. Go spin that one. Tell me how it works. But Addie not quite able to pull it off, but that's a bold place to do that for sure. And I give her full credit for going for it. Like she's not messing around. She wants to do something that's going to make the highlight reels and go down in history on that face. So going for it and didn't quite work out, but definitely full props to Addie.
Yeah, absolutely. And then after her, we had Manon Loshi on her first ever FWT run. And it was huge. Massive run.
Dude, Manon Loski is a talent. She's kind of unassuming. I won't say shy, but she's not like loud and braggy and stuff. She's kind of chill and pretty straightforward, but as soon as she gets her skis on, she's so gnarly. And she has, I'd say probably, with a handful of other women on the tour, she has a really, really deep bag of tricks, but she didn't do any of that. She went pure freeride on the back, and it paid off. I mean, she went so big. She was skiing really well and really fast, aggressively in the steep and technical terrain. And then she
opened up a new section as well.
Totally, yeah. And that huge air at the bottom, like everything about Manon Loski's run was epic. It was so cool to see a rookie come out with that kind of fire. Yeah,
really. And then that funny little crash over the line, but she made it over. But she ended up with a 94. Now, I can't remember the last time a ski women rider ended up with a 94. And I was like, is that the highest score that anybody's ever got in ski women at that point?
We'll have to ask Raina Barker, the FWT historian. He'll have that just right off the top of his head.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can actually get him. If so, I'll cut him in right here on the episode. I actually sent him a message and was chatting with Raina, and he said he was on the bunny hill with his son, trying to watch it on his phone. So, there's the guy who's enjoying his retirement.
Yeah. But a huge score for sure for Manon. So that was sick to see her just blow the doors off in her first FWT run, especially after missing all last season with an injury. Yeah, she's definitely here to play.
Right, because she was wildcard, or she won the right to be on the tour last year, injured herself, and was wildcarded for this year. So we
they
skipped
gave her
the
injury wildcard
for her to get a little older. She's only 21, so holy smokes! So had a little extra chance to mature as a human. Heal up the body a little bit, and coming back with kind of a vengeance. The next run we had was Hedvig, which was quite a classic Hedvig run. What you'd expect. No big backflips or anything wild, but she just put a run down to her skis, skied really solidly, kind of what you expect. the reason I mentioned that is because Susanna Wittig took the same line as Hedvig, but went huge, a little faster, bigger airs, and then took the same air as Manon at the end, which blew everyone away, but she took it bigger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if we're talking about Hedvig or we're on to Susanna.
Susanna. So I mentioned Hedvig just because we watched that run, and then we have Susanna pop in. She took the same entrance same kind of spicy entrance as Hedvig did, and then ended up doing the same line as Manon lower down, that big air, and she skied both of those sections better than the other rider.
Oh, totally. Yeah, she took all the best elements from a couple of other runs and just stepped them up. She's got some hunger. She was wildcarded on this year as well. And I feel like anytime you get a wild card onto the tour, there's a certain amount of pressure to perform, to back up that wild card being granted. And holy, did she ever deliver that? I mean, you saw Manon's bomb hole go by while Zuza was still way high in the air, and then just bolts, like she stomped so strong. She looked motivated again, pure free ride, not messing around with any freestyle elements, which she has. I mean, she was a slopestyle champ in Poland 6 or 7 years ago, so she's definitely got tricks. But opting to leave that stuff kind of in the pocket and go all in on freeride, and it sure paid off. I mean, we watched the run and we're kind of sitting there going, oh yeah, that could be close, because Manon was in the hot seat for ages. And then they dropped that score 97.67. If Manon's was the highest score ever in ski women, well, that record didn't last for too long, because Zuza just blew it away.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe it. Like, seeing that 94, I was like, oh, she's won, right? Just knowing, I've seen all these events in the past. A 94 itself is hard to beat. It's hard to get. It's almost impossible to beat. And I was like, there's no way. So, Susanna did her run, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe in second place, just because I had that bias in my head of like, how do you beat a 94? And then I went back and watched it again and was like, oh, that's how you beat it. Like, the judging got it right. So a 97.67 is like as near perfect score as you can get in freeride. So congrats to her. She looked shocked at the bottom.
She totally did. Yeah, she was blown away. She was like, that was a good run. She felt good about it. I don't think she was expecting to see a score like that. And to be totally honest, that's a big statement from the judges when you still have a couple riders up at the top, because they kind of paint themselves into a corner. I mean, obviously you have decimals, so you can still beat it. There's 98, 99, 99.1, 2, 3, like you can beat it, but you're definitely putting yourself into a bit of a corner, which clearly they were completely comfortable to do. They left themselves that tiny little margin to drop a score in there above that if need be. But I think overall it's just a testament of the strength of the ski women's field right now, where 2 scores in the 90s. It's so strong, and we had a couple of big crashes on runs that may well have scored very highly too. Lydia had a great run with a crash. Taylor Dobbins was smoking before she went down. She was going so well. So definitely, I'm like fizzing with excitement over ski women's field, because there's just so much, and we haven't even got onto a freestyle venue yet that's friendly to it, where Hedvig and Justine can flip, Addie can 3 or flip, Manon's got Astrid's got tricks. Like when we get onto a freestyle friendly face, I think we're going to see them go off in a totally different direction too than what we saw on the Petit Bec and Verbier.
Yeah, that's awesome. And back to the point of giving her that 97.67, we had Justine, last year's champion, still to come.
Yeah.
And she's the only one that attempted a flip, and it was enormous. And she just over-rotated it. It was so close.
It was so close. And just another big name checking into Heartbreak Hotel there. So many people with... I would have been really interested to see what they would have done with that if she had stomped that flip. Yeah, like... and I don't know, I'm not a judge, and I didn't actually ask those guys when I chatted with them for the direct comparison, but I would have been very interested to see, because Zuz's run was so hot. It was fire. It was like ferocious top to bottom. Justine's top was good, but then if you take good and unbelievable and compare it against great, unbelievable, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how they would have scored that. Especially in a field where there wasn't a lot of freestyle, in an area where it's difficult to do freestyle, and on a feature that was just gobbling people up. So who knows? I mean, it comes down to what could have been. Now
I wonder if they take. I wonder if they take into account, like, so you do an event like this where there's really not a lot of freestyle, and then you get a run like that, which, like you said, was, good, and then unbelievable, versus a run that's amazing, right? Do they still judge that backflip, or a backflip, say a landed backflip, higher than maybe they would have in account with more of them? So in an event where there isn't a lot of free ride and someone does something like that, is it judged or given a slightly higher rating in a comp where there hasn't been others versus one in a comp with many?
I think so, because it shows how hard it is to do that. Because if it was, a perfectly formed windlet booter that was easy to approach with a nice rolling approach, where it was easier to carry your speed, and you flip that, that's a different thing altogether. But doing it off a cliff on the Petit Bec, there's a huge element of difficulty to that, and I think they would have recognized and rewarded it. Justine herself thought that she would have been in the neighborhood of second or third. That was her take on it after watching. Obviously, riders don't get to judge themselves. This isn't the Kings and Queens of Corbett, so the judges get to do it. But that's where she said she would have placed herself had she stomped that. So take that for what it's worth.
Take it for what it's worth, right? Yeah. So another pretty amazing competition with some record-breaking runs. So like Zuzana was another one who had been on the tour and off the tour, got wild carded. And I remember talking to her when she left the first time, and I was like, keep doing it. Like, you deserve to be here. Like, you should be here. So it's great to see her back. And now, like I said, like we mentioned with Addison and like the whole group.
It's so sick.
Exciting.
It's so sick right now.
So we'll see what happens at the next event. We're still waiting to hear about Andorra. Hopefully that goes, and if that doesn't go, then the next comp will be in Kicking Horse in about two and a half weeks. Also, I didn't mention, but as we're talking about these events, or the event and these rides and these runs, you can actually go to the freerideworldtour.com website, and you can watch all the runs back again. You can go and follow along through the replay. You can see the results. You can click on every single rider. It goes right to their runs. So everything we're talking about, you can, if you happen to be at your computer, maybe you're not at work sitting at your desk, or maybe if you are at work sitting at your desk, maybe if whatever, you're not in your car, but if you're near a computer, you can actually watch all of these runs while we're talking about them. So that's a really cool feature. So moving on to the men's event. Another event where there was a hefty amount of crashes. And, some of them were because wild things were attempted, and a lot of them were actually because of that Heartbreak Hotel cliff, that crappy little feature that just decided to ruin everybody's day.
Literally ruin everybody's day.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 men had the NS. 7 men had no score because they lost the ski or something happened. And they were all pretty impressive. So I understand when you do something like that, you can blow a shoe. But I think the whatever was happening with the conditions in that spot lower down just added to it. Because normally you'd see that happening, and these guys will just, maybe they'll tumble. The ski won't come off. But we lost a lot of skis today.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so weird, honestly. I mean, some of them, as you said, some of them like Max Palm, Wei Tian, Abel, and Blake, like just going to the moon. And your skis are going to come off when you crash that hard. But the ones on that feature, that Heartbreak Hotel feature, really good runs that just ended in like the worst way. Thibaut and Marcus, both on hot runs and just blowing up on that final feature, which I don't think anybody really gave even that much credit. They're like, oh yeah, I'll toss a flip at the end and that'll be sweet. And it took so many of them down. It'll be interesting whenever the next time we compete on the Petit Bec, if that one gets avoided.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, good point, right? Although I doubt it. Because that's where everybody went, because that's just a natural spot within.
Yeah, it's right there. It's got a great lip.
And it's within the line, too, so you're not going to avoid it, because what else is going to be there to hit, right? If you ski past it, the judges are going to be like, why did he ski past that? So you have to find a completely different line that takes you to another spot at that elevation where there's another feature, or you're just stuck hitting that because that's just how the mountain flows, right?
Totally. And there were riders that made it work. Finn Billis and Ben Richards took it at a different angle, like a bit more over on the riders right from a slightly different angle, and they made it work. Chablot made it work. That's, he's man, he just does what he does. And he's so good at doing it. So there were a few. So it's you're right. Yeah, they're not going to avoid it next time, but it might definitely be a little bit, maybe a few more riders taking it the way Finn and Ben did.
So with the, I guess the podium for men's ski, in first place we have the Freeride robot, Mr. Max Hitzig, which you did shout out on the show. You're like, we've been calling him the Freeride robot. I think that was just us that have been calling him that. And I hope it takes off. I texted him, congratulations. I don't know if I read it on our stories, or whatever, but I said, hey, congratulations to the Freeride robot, and he laughed. Because he
thinks it's funny. I mean, he's so good. He's so precise. He's so strong. We kind of joked with him last year in Fieberbrunn that when he had a really uncharacteristic fall, that the programming just glitched. But he's so good at this. He's so incredibly good at this. He's so precise where he puts his feet, his takeoffs, all of it is just so well executed. And I mean, it's a skill, it's a talent, it's hard work, it's all of the things. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Max by calling them that, but it just is like, it's incredible what he's able to do just again and again and again. Like executing with that kind of consistency is incredible. It's a pretty special time to be involved in freeride because the level is just out of hand.
And strength, like, you see a lot of these other riders, like if you look at, say, Marcus Goguen versus Max Hitzig, they're both unbelievable riders, like two of the best on the tour. But watching Marcus is an adventure, and then watching Max is like reading a blueprint. It's two different styles of riding, but they're both equally impressive. So like Max's run specifically, huge deep air and then another air, massive 360 with a perfect landing. And the thing with him is, I think the reason we call him the robot is, on the broadcast he said he's untroubled by gravity. Yeah. No, there's absolutely no external forces that puts him out of place ever. It's like he sets up.
I do have to just take a slight exception to that because he kneed himself in the face hard on that 360, really hard. And I called it completely wrong in the broadcast when he came through the finish and he was kind of tucked down. He had his hands over his face. I thought he was, when you're so stoked and you just put your hands down or your head down into your hands because you're just like so elated. That's what I thought it was. And then I heard him talking to Tenra, who was in the hot seat at the time, and he's like, I need myself in the face so hard. He said he couldn't eat his granola bar after because he couldn't make his jaw work. It came good after the fact, but there was definitely he maxed himself out, to pardon the pun, but he maxed himself out on that one, and he was able to hold it, but it took a toll. So he's definitely, even for him, he knows in this field he's got to push hard if he wants to be able to beat the rest of those ski men.
Right on. So an amazing run from the Freeride robot, puts himself back on top. Another impressive win to follow up last year's win at Kicking Horse with the most amazing backflip I think we've ever seen on the tour. Second place is one I am really stoked about. I spent a lot of time hanging out with this guy last year, just as a person, and he is a beauty of a human. Living in Squamish, I saw him up on the hill on Whistler a couple times before he flew over to Europe. Finn Billis. Now, this is a guy who came onto the tour last year as a wild card from the slopestyle background, full freestyle guy. His brother was on the tour, who just was a kid that just went massive and would just find transition. So trying to figure out how Finn would fit. You know, last year he did a bunch of little things where I don't think the judges really fully understood what he was doing, you know, with some reverts and whatnot. So looking and thinking about that last year, I was always like, gee, I wonder if Finn's going to be the kind of guy that's going to be able to get onto the podium, just because of the way he skis is so different. You know, unless there's a big freeride event and he does something wild with the style that he's capable of. But when it comes to like this pure freeride, I wasn't sure if he was able to get to that point or if he would be able to be judged into that spot. Well, he just completely proved me wrong with this run yesterday, which was a real treat to watch.
Yeah, it's been really cool watching Finn. You know, he's a super laid back guy and never takes anything too seriously, but he's been studying this, and each event he gets a little stronger result and a little stronger result and a little stronger result, and each time he learns something and he takes it away and he puts it into his own style, which is, you know, spectacular. And I love how he skis and I love watching him in the air. And in this one, he found the elements that the judges are looking for without sacrificing himself to it, you know, to try to change his style, just recognizing what line score actually means. You know, a switch 180 off a 2-meter cliff is not going to blow their minds, but a 360 off that huge thing that he did, and he, I mean, he gets it now, and I think he's going to be a huge threat because the skiing is there for sure, the technique. His air game is probably one of the strongest on the tour, and he's definitely starting to understand it better, which I think is super dangerous for the rest of the riders, because when Finn gets what they want to see and understands how the scoring works, he can deliver it, and he proved that yesterday with that run. It was so sick to see him deliver that on that big steep face.
Oh, absolutely. And it was so fast, too. Like an 89.33, like just right there at the 90 mark. So fast to start. That big 3 straight into flat spin. And he stomped that feature that everybody else got taken out by, which is a huge statement, right? And that's just a testament to him being able to, like, spend all that time in the air, you know, going through the slopestyle events and just being able to put his feet down and get through it. So, you know, plus he's a smaller guy too, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Maybe it didn't have as much force hitting that slope if there was that punchable crest.
Well, and he took it at a better angle. Him and Ben Richards had a different takeoff. They took off a bit more skiers right, and they figured it out. You know, in inspection, that a little bit of cross court there on a slightly different trajectory. Whether they knew that was because the other one was going to be what it was, or that's just what drew them to the takeoff. But it was interesting that, you know, two of the Kiwi riders, the only two Kiwi riders that hit that feature, both hit it the same way, and were one of, or two of very few people to make that one work.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So congrats to them. And then Christopher Turdell. I remember when he used to be good, and he still is.
That's so funny. He's so humble. He's been really open about the fact that the level has changed, and he feels like he hasn't evolved with it. The last guy too, the very, very last person of the day to drop, and he still opened up a new line. He found fresh powder to ski. You know, a 360 right at the top over the exposure. I think the judges were blown away by that, because that is a really, really scary place to do that. And he just mountain goated his way through there. He was fast. He was fluid. Had that, again, another feature that was kind of interesting was that wind lip at the bottom. A lot of people couldn't make it work, and they were barely getting enough air to even get off the ground. We saw a couple like really chucked threes that were barely even a ski length in distance. And he managed to find the speed to do a lofty backflip on that bottom thing. So, kind of raising the bar. It was really only him and Max Palm that went that size. So very cool to see Turdell back in the mix, and he was just beaming after. He was so pumped to be. I think he feels like, again, the level has changed. Everybody's super young, and so for him to be mixing it up and on the podium in that field is like, he's wily, and he has knowledge and experience that other riders don't have. So, putting that into play yesterday showed exactly why he's got 2 world titles.
Oh, absolutely, and you could see it through his run. So he had that 360. So you say he's worried about where the level of competition has gone. I honestly think it's just coming up to his level. Honestly, just seeing what he's done over the years, and you talking about his experience was on display in that run. That big 360 to the huge air, but then he went into the double, and did you notice how he slowed himself down before he went into it? So instead of just like skiing in hot, being like, oh, I have to hit this thing, he's like, well, I'm going to hit this thing, but this is the pace that you need to do it at. Whereas a younger rider may have just blasted through that spot. He slowed himself down just so he could find the perfect spot to land. And then, like you said, heading into that wind lip at the bottom where people were going small and doing whatever, he boosted that backflip off.
Yeah, he went so high.
So just his ability to assess the terrain, I think, is second to none still. And, whatever he says about, these new kids and whatnot, I think they still have to chase him.
Yeah, I agree completely. And yesterday proved it.
Yeah. So experience, there's a lot to be said about experience, but there's also a lot to be said. There's also a lot to be said about youthful exuberance and just straight up testosterone. Like I mentioned earlier, is Marcus Gauguin had another adventure of a run, which is just it's crazy to watch. And the note I put on that run was he tried to do it all.
Yeah, he really did, and he, I mean, first of all, the tricks that he was doing, the number of features that he was able to link together. Take a step back from the tricks, the technical skiing skill to be able to lay turns that are that aggressive and that forceful, to redirect, to get features that other people aren't getting, and then toss tricks into them. I mean, it's just incredible how strong he is, how good his actual skiing skill is, and then it's just trick to trick to trick to trick with like beautifully executed carved turns in between them. And he was definitely on a threatening run with all of that packed into it before he got taken down on that last hit.
Yeah. Another point that another like highlight for me was Max Palm's massive floaty 360, which unfortunately didn't land smooth, but it was very reminiscent of prime Sean Pettit.
Yeah, my honest opinion on that move is it needed waist deep powder to land that, not 10 centimeters of powder over firm hard pack. But holy, did he ever go for it? I mean, he went so far in the air, and the rotation was perfect. He did it nice and slow. He floated around. He knew where he was. It was just, I don't think there's a human on earth that could withstand that kind of impact.
I don't know if you saw some of Max's like Instagram highlights recently, but he had an air where he landed, and it looks like his lower body compacted into his upper body, and he just stood up and skied out of it. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So if there's there's a guy that can separate his upper, like basically like a Russian nesting doll, just be able to like, and then stack himself on himself and then release. So like the guy's got to have unbelievable legs or a super flexible back, because I saw that and I expected him to land it. The whole YouTube chat went wild.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, that was an incredible move, and I think if he had Pow there, he probably would have pulled it off. But wasn't to be. Another big name taken down in the Verbier Huckfest that was the ski men's field.
I
think we really need to chat about the first rider out of the gate, because this was so exciting. It was so fun. I can't not smile whenever I see Tenra. He's just such like an enthusiastic guy. He's so bubbly. He's all stoked on skiing. Like, maybe one of the most passionate skiers on the entire tour, or riders, like everybody included. And you saw it when he came through the finish. He was like, "Oh, the snow was awesome!" Like, he was just so fired up. And what a way to start! I mean, being the first guy to drop, like drawing drop number 1 is gnarly. That's so intense, and it's going to be hard to put a big score down. And he just like stepped right into the pressure and totally delivered. It was such a great run, and seeing his face and his reaction at the bottom was just like it was so cool.
Yeah, it was great. As I know that you had mentioned him, I think on a previous episode where you were pumped to see him. So I watched that, and then good start to his career. And then I think you were talking about his Kiwi accent. He's learning English, but he's got a bit of a Kiwi accent to his Japanese. It's like a Japanese awesome. Kiwi.
Yeah, it's a great accent. He's definitely got a big Kiwi twinge. He spent a ton of time in New Zealand. That's kind of where he cut his teeth in freeride competition, and hanging with the Kiwis in Innsbruck as well. He's it's very cool to hear that combo of the two accents speaking English.
I wonder if they're going to adopt him or make him an honorary member of Team Useless.
He's pretty useful. I don't know if he exactly fits the mold, but man, great start for Tenra.
Awesome. Anything else? Actually, we'll notice we did have one airbag deploy from Simon Paradin.
Two. Abel's came out too.
Did Abel's came out as well?
Yeah,
Abel had a big run as well. As he does, he went into a new zone, but he always just goes for it. That's kind of how I would describe him, is like, there's something I'm going to do, I am just going to go for it. And he blew his ski on the landing. And actually some of the comments that someone made is like, why are the commentators so casual right now?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember it casual, but I'll rewatch it. I mean, Abel and Blake Marshall kind of fell into the same trap where they got a little bit caught in the fall line and ended up absolutely firing off something that they had not intended to hit like that. Like, Abel's plan wasn't to jump over half the face. He got a little bit tangled up. He had too much speed from his last thing, and he knew if he tried to chuck him sideways, he would get high-sided and sent to Ragdoll City. So he just kept it in the fall line and went off that point above 2 other cliff bands and just aired over all of it. That wasn't just for everybody to know that he's not that reckless. Like, that wasn't his plan. And Blake Marshall had the exact same thing. He was going too fast out of the last feature, couldn't shut it down in the spot where he was, and so it just ended up firing off, airing over, like a 3-stage triple and just taking it as a single. What I'd like to get like some kind of measuring tape out and look at Max Palm takeoff to landing, Wei Tian takeoff to landing, Abel and Blake, and see who, in the reckless Huckfest actually went the furthest, because those bomb holes were absurd. Looking at the face in real life and seeing how far down the hole was from the takeoff was like, it didn't even make sense. None of this makes sense. But those 4 guys above the rest of the field just were so far past any even remote hope of transition. And And yeah, so we gotta get the tape out, and then maybe we can measure it back. We can somehow compare Hitzig's George Rodney pyramid from Kicking Horse last year, backflip, and see, you know, what are we looking at for most gigantic air of the current FWT era.
We need one of those like laser measures. Maybe we'll go to Home Depot and we'll pick up a laser measure for you. So you could probably shoot it from the commentator's booth and just write a little note and then add that in. Like Ben Richards, Blake Marshall. My notes were here. Big 360, then kept momentum, sending to the parking lot because he's like he's got an appointment this afternoon. He's got to get down the hill quick. And you mentioned Wei Tian as well. Wei Tian had a gnarly like line choice. It reminded me of that sketchy line that Sam Smoothies keyed all those years ago, where he was like Billy goating like through the cliffs faces and whatnot.
Yeah,
so,
and
like,
lily padding through.
Yeah, lily padding through. Like Wei Tian comes through, super spicy technical line, and then he got into the top of another double, but he didn't have a proper takeoff, so he just started the rock ride over the top of the cliff, like right through all the spicy rocks into the double.
Yeah, so they gave him line of the day, which I think is absolutely well earned. It was so creative. It was extremely technical. It was pure free ride, and you know there's a real direct comparison to be made between rookie and veteran, because he took off on the final cliff where he did that 360 to Doom in the same exact spot that Turdell took off, and Turdell put in that extra turn that allowed him to land in the transition, and Wei Tian straight line from like 30 feet up off that thing into a 360. You know, that it's there, right there is experience versus youthful exuberance. And you know what's wild about how good these guys are is Wei Tian said while he was in the air coming out of the 3, he in his own mind was like 100% I'm landing this. I've got this. And I was like, what? No, you didn't. And he's like, no, I thought for sure I was going to stomp that. And I'm like, well, that makes one of us. Because to me, it just looked way too big for the terrain. There was too much downward impact. And he couldn't hold on to it. So he's got a little goose egg on his cheekbone from taking the knees into his grill. But luckily he's all right. He's probably feeling a little bit stiff and sore today, as a lot of people are. I got a ride with Abel and his coach Christian from Verbier to here in Geneva, and Abel was definitely moving. He was pretty sore. Definitely a bad case of huck neck.
Oof, I can only imagine, man. I'm surprised that like one of those new like ice bath companies and like sauna companies, those portable ice baths that you can buy now, that you see on Instagram or that. I'm surprised they haven't sponsored the tour yet. Huckneck, have a soak.
So two airbags out. Simon Peridon was the other one. Then Abel, and he was another one who was on a really good run. He had a big 360 up at the top, and he was going for it. I mean, I gotta imagine that the Verbier kids, the locals, are wearing a bit of extra weight on their shoulders from the pressure of competing at home.
Oh, you'd think so, right? Like, especially that quickly. You know, hey, guess what? We're doing a comp next week or in 5 days at home. You know, a question for you. Did some of the riders that live in Verbier, so like potentially Liam or Sibyl or Tiff, did they stay in the hotel or did they stay at home?
I think a lot of them just stayed at home. Yeah, because the riders weren't in a hotel as normal, because this was such a last minute scramble. They were scattered all over town in little apartments, just in kind of random groupings, which was actually, for the first comp of the year, a really cool way to do it, because it wasn't all the Americans with each other and all the French with each other and all the Swedes with each other. It was a kind of mishmash of everybody, skiers and snowboarders, different nationalities, all in apartments. So I think, I mean, first of all, it was out of necessity, because that was just the accommodation that was available at the absolute last minute. But it also ended up being a really cool way for the riders to get to know each other right off the bat, which is, sometimes it takes a little bit longer because especially the rookies, they'll hang out with the people that they know that are from where they're from. And, it can be often not really until the after party that people start to mix it up a little bit. But this time they were all kind of closer together. But yeah, I think the Verbier riders all stayed together, and Simon and Martin Bender had their local crew, their shred crew, Les Gorilles, the gorillas as they call themselves. Every place has that. It's like typically a group of boys somewhere between about 16 and maybe 21, and there's FWT, there's the Goon Squad in Whistler, there's Les Gorilles in Verbier, and both of them, Bender and Simon, asked me the night before or the morning of, like, please mention the gorillas. And I was like, what is the gorillas? And they're like, don't worry about it, just mention it. And then the guy in the gorilla suit was at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna ask you, like, what's the deal with the gorilla dude?
Yeah, so that's their shred squad.
Crew.
It's the Verbier Freeride crew, and they've got an Instagram account, and it's just reckless buffoonery, really, like on the mountain.
I loved it. Yeah, amazing. Well, that was a great way to start the year. Unexpected way to start the year, but a great way to start the year, which is it was fun to watch. It was definitely worth staying up from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. for. So here we go. The season has started, and from the looks of things, the bar has been set high.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to go into the next event, whether it's Ordino in Andorra or whether it's Kicking Horse, with a bunch of big names in all categories basically needing a result. Because of the loss of Baqueira, we're down to 3 now before the cut. So it's critical now with 1 down. If you had a crash in Verbier, you need a couple solid results under your belt if you want to make that cut and move on to FWT finals in Fieberbrunn and then back to Verbier for the Extreme. So it's going to be very interesting to see how riders approach the next comp, and what the takes are, what they're doing, how hard they go. I mean, I think we know everybody's just going to be going ballistic, and especially if we have good snow. I mean, we've seen now. This is what you get when the snow is on. Everybody goes absolutely to the wall. And I mean, I'm here for it. I'd love to see it. I want to see a few more, maybe a slightly higher success rate, really put the judges to work, get them using those decimal points in the high 90s. But I think there's definitely going to be an interesting dynamic coming into the next event with a lot of big names that are at the very bottom of the rankings list.
Do that need a result?
Yeah.
Right. So they're either going for it or they're taking it easy. Right. So I know we've had this conversation before, and maybe we'll touch on this in a future episode. But do you go for it, or do you take it a little? You dial it back a little bit so you can get a point. So you can get points on the board, right? Because if you crash in the first 2, you're basically pretty much done.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a hard one, because if you do dial it back, and everybody who doesn't dial it back lands, then you can have a good clean run and still come 16th. And then that's another throwaway. So it's definitely, there's going to be some strategy coming into play, and it'll be interesting to see how the riders kind of look at it, because, snowboard women, ski women, snowboard men, and for sure ski men all have some real strong riders who just didn't quite have their day and are now looking up at the cut line from the bad side. Obviously, there's still everything to play for and lots of time to do it. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yeah, right on. So that kind of wraps up the comp itself. So let's see how we did on the Peak Performance Fun Bet. So we have the Peak Performance Fun Bet League, the Freeride Guide Podcast League, which a lot of you joined. I think we have like 50-something people.
Yeah, we got over 50
joined.
people.
have joined in, which is pretty sweet. So we're stoked you guys are joining us for there, in there. And it's not too late to sign up or join the league. You can still find us and come on in. So I did okay at this event personally. I think overall in the entire competition, I'm sitting 60th. I don't know how many there are, but there's a couple thousand, I think.
Yeah, there's
thousands. I'm at 60. I'm 60th overall. So for men's ski, I chose Max Hitzig, Christopher Trudell, and Wei Tian. And then I hit with Max and I hit with Trudell, which is pretty rad. So I got some points for that. For the women's competition, I had Molly, Manon, and Justine. So I hit with 2 for there as well. Men's snowboard, I had Victor, Liam Rivera, and Cody Bramwell, who the last 2 unfortunately had some crashes, but I pulled in Victor in the first spot. And then for women's snowboard, I had Tiffany, Erin Sauve, and Anna Martinez. So I got Anna in there. The only one that I had 2 that I hit perfectly, which is Victor and Max. So, I did all right. I did
not. I am in 30th in our league and like 2000th, probably something like that overall. So I'm going to have to step it up for sure a lot and really make some better decisions.
You said that you choose with your heart, so maybe you got to talk to these people that you're choosing and be like, hey, put a damn good rundown.
Yeah. But it's so much fun. You got to join up. It gets you involved. It's fantasy league for Freeride, and it just kind of gives you a little bit more skin in the game when you're not the one out there risking your life for free goggles on the side of a mountain.
Yeah, right. And I was thinking we should probably do something for the Freeride Guide podcast team, like maybe the winners. We're talking about getting some like sticker packages or maybe some shirts or something made. So stay tuned for that. So if you want to come and join us, the Freeride Guide podcast league within the Peak Performance Fun Bet, come join us, find us. You'll just hit the sign up button, or you just ask to be joined.
Yeah, you'll get right in there.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it says, but I know people are asking to be a part of it, and then I accept them. So there you go. So yeah, Peak Performance Fun Bet. I almost forgot about it again. So I was like, I'm gonna wait till the last minute, as I always do, because I always overthink it. So if I put my numbers in, if I put my picks in, and then like 2 or 3 hours goes by, and like I could see a bird fly, and then I'll start thinking about something else, and I'll be like, oh, maybe I should change this. So I don't do it till the last minute, so I don't go back and change it. So I went and had a nap. I went to sleep because I wanted to watch the whole event. So I fell asleep, and I woke up right when the comp was about to start and went, oh no. And it was supposed to have started, and I think I would have missed the whole thing. But fortunately, I was able to get my picks in. I wasn't able to do the overall, but I'm pretty happy with my overall picks. We'll see. But the event picks, I think I was cool with. So I managed to get them in. So that was good. So that kind of wraps up this episode, the Verbier Pro recap, in this, I guess, fourth or fifth episode of the Freeride Guide podcast. We've had a few more than we expected.
Yeah, I got a few emergency updates in there that are that are clogging things up. Keep the emails coming too. I'm really enjoying that, hearing from you guys and seeing what you think of what we're doing and what the tour's doing and what the riders are doing and all of that. So keep that coming in, because we're really enjoying you guys engaging with us.
Absolutely. And that is Backslap at freerideguidepodcast.com. Backslap at freerideguidepodcast.com. So send us your notes, but please tell us where you're from too. We need your name, but also where you're writing in from. So we want to give you the appropriate shout out. So if you have thoughts on this event, thoughts on the whole event overall, you want to call us out on one of our takes, do it. We want to keep you guys involved. So this has been really fun so far. So if you're listening to this, make sure you go to the Freeride Guide podcast and follow there. You can get, for this season, we'll be putting the show on the Low Pressure podcast feed. So if that's where you're listening to it, that's great. Go and follow the Freeride Guide podcast feed. Because we are going to be shifting next season full on, and we want you guys to start listening through there. Plus, there's going to be some extra features on the Freeride Guide channel that you won't be able to get on the LPP channel. So thanks, Derek. I know that you've been traveling around a little bit and you're feeling a little under the weather. So thanks for powering through, my man.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward already to the next stop. I'm super excited about this season kickoff. It really feels good to be underway, to have an event under our belt, and the riders have put their cards on the table now. Everything's, it's not clear, but definitely we know that in all 4 categories, the level is through the roof. The riders are hungry to show us all what they've got, what they can do. And once again, the FWT staff is moving mountains to make these things happen.
Awesome. Right on. And appreciate you for getting it together. You're currently in a hotel room in Geneva. I am in an attic in Revelstoke, so neither of us are at home, but we're making it happen for you guys listening. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed to whatever podcast platform you're listening on through the Freeride podcast channel. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Some of the episodes we're able to record. It just depends, or video record. Just depends on the European Wi-Fi, I guess, where Derek is. But we're doing everything we can to make this exciting and entertaining for you and for us. So thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon. Whether it's with news or if it's a recap, I guess you're just gonna have to wait and find out, because that's pretty much what we're doing.
Yeah, wait and see.
Hurry up and wait. Yeah, excellent. Right on, Derek. Well, thanks, man. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.